called my club called Julie home. All that trouble. She left me sitting here all alone. All that trouble. I can tell it's you by the way you look. So no, still out. You just spend your time, 'cause you ain't no friend of mine. Trouble go away from my door. All that trouble. And don't you never come back no more. All that trouble. Yeah, 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 yeah. Yeah, 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 yeah.
I often try and figure out where did they come in, because I don't know. Didn't come from anyone near a musical family. The nearest I can think of is my grandfather and my mother's father played a bit of the tin whistle, and did a bit of this, I don't know what they call it nowadays, but they're like I think that you play on a board, and it dances.
Okay.
You know, there's a name for it now. They weren't puppets, I think, on a string, I think, but they used to make the tapping. And of course he was a carpenter and he made all this by hand, but there was a name for him, and you could have a figure just made out of timber, and this figure would be dancing and clipping on the board, like, you know. I think there's actually a song, isn't there, the Dancing Dolls 3, you know that song?
Yeah.
The board went to mend the back door. Someone sings that song, but it was something on that line. It was, I think that was done at the time. Now that's the only music that I can trace back to, but I had no interest in music up to about the age, I suppose, of maybe 12. None whatsoever. Just my mother wanted me to go playing an accordion, and I hated the accordion, so there's no way that I was going. And I was already after doing 7 years Irish step dancing, and I hated that more. Hated the sight of it. Had no interest whatsoever in Irish dancing. But good friend of mine, Patsy Redmond, and we were in the one class together, and this word came that her brother Manning was coming to the school. He was coming to the primary school. Patsy and myself now were going across to first year at this stage, and he was starting off a band. And of course, Christian Brothers bands usually were marching bands, flutes and a drum and, I don't know, maybe a harmonica, but you played up to matches and up and down, you know, and you'd have the usual tam and the sesh and whatever. This was going to be different, but I had no interest in it whatsoever, absolutely none whatsoever about this. And I can remember it was starting off, and they were looking for recruits, and it was coming up in a week's time that anyone interested was to meet at 4 o'clock over in the primary school, and he was going to interviews and all this. And I can remember Patsy and my mother coaxing me outside in the yard, and I was digging the heels in. But Patsy said the magical words. He said, look, he said, if we joined this band, he says, we'd be getting off from school. And you know, we'd be getting time off from school and going off playing, and that did it. And Patsy was gone in a week out of the band, and I stayed for the 3 years. I think I was 12, 13, about 15 when I left school. But Brother Manning was a genius, because he formed, now we had about 200, I'd say, there the first time. Now we said, there won't be 200 here next week. If I get 20 to 25 that's all I want. But once you join, you're not leaving. There's no leaving. And I can always remember what he said, this is the only way that you leave this band. So that was that. He was a red-haired man, but a nice man now, strict but nice, Brother Manning. And yeah, we stayed. And he started off, now Oliver Corbett would have been in it, Rem Joy, lads that went on to music after. But Oliver would have been into music before me now, because he'd have been on the piano with Sister Rosalie, like. But we had flageolets and harmonicas. And we weren't reading music, we just done the tonic salsa. And we went over to our first fish in Turles, and we came second. Out of all the bands going, we came second. and got the whatever trophies they got. The next year when we went back, he was already after writing out music for us, teaching us how to read music. Now he was the first ever to teach me music, and through light classical music, that's what it was, all light classical, and he had to arrange all that for the harmonica and for the flageolet. He had some of us divided up into recorders, he had more of us divided up into, so he had 4 sections with melodicas, and Paddy Cale above, I don't know who the other 2 were, they played the big long recorders, bass recorders. That's who was Paddy Cale and Carl Brew. But the man was a genius. I mean, he could convert all that classical music to suit those simple instruments. And we went off to the Fish that year and won the cup. The second year we won the cup. So the third year we had it. Don't know where the cup went, but... And I can remember the very last year we went off for sweets up the town in Thurles. Didn't hear the results. And I can always remember coming back that narrow street. And there was girls coming out of and we said, who won? Oh, Cashel as usual. Yeah, it was a fantastic band, yeah. Fantastic band. You have, I think, a photograph of that band.
That's right.
Taken on the steps below. But the bug hit me then with music, you know. It just hit me, and I joined the brass band as well. Went up to the brass band, it was Mickey Burke. At that time you had to get someone to introduce you and bring you up to the brass band, and of course it was a clarinet I wanted to play, but it was a trumpet I was put on, or a cornet at that time, and Radio Luxembourg was on at that time, late in the night, great station, and Top of the Pops and Pete Murray and all this, but I'd have to go to bed at 11 o'clock, and I can remember going up the stairs one night at 11 o'clock in the other house, and the next thing I heard this tune. Didn't know what it was, never heard this music before, but as it happened, it was Kenny Ball playing Midnight in Moscow. And the bug hit me. It was jazz. The bug hit me then for the brass jazz from there on, and I was a very big jazz fan. Still am to this day, you know. Well, the first group, I suppose, like all young fellas starting off, mad to get a group going, you know, and you think that should be wonderful, was Oliver Corbett on the drums, Ranjai on an acoustic guitar, and me on the cornet. It's only the cornet I had in on loan from the brass band, like. But that didn't last long because I bought my own trumpet very shortly after joining the brass band. But we practiced every Sunday. It was like a religion in the room 3 of the Holy Family Hall. And we were using no electricity. We were totally acoustic, wireless. And Rem would have to walk in from George's Land with the guitar on his back, an ordinary Spanish guitar. And I'd have to go down in the meantime, down to Oliver Corbett's house. He was living in Bourclough. And he was after buying a handy little small set of drums off of the newspaper, the Evening Press or something like that. Something in Dublin. I don't know how he got them down or what he paid for them, but there was only a bass drum, a cymbal, and the side drum and sticks. That was it, and the pedal. That was but they were all in a huge cardboard box, I suppose about the size of a big fridge, and a rope around it, a heavy rope tying it around to go around the bottom, and they'd be below in his room or kitchen downstairs, and I'd go down to him. We'd have a timed out that I'd go down maybe about 1:45 on a Sunday afternoon, and the two of us would grab each side of the rope. Now this box was an ordinary cardboard box, but it wouldn't be a ton weight now, but you had to catch the rope at each side, and we'd walk up down Bourclough, up the main street, up William Street, the shortest route, and into the Holy Family Hall. And there was always, not always, but sometimes there was a small little terrier in one of the houses in William Street. Now he never minded nobody, but he had a thing about this box, and he went for the heels every time he saw this box coming. but we'd be touch and go if he was out lying at the door. But anyway, we'd be above then, and Rem would make his way in. Might get a lift. If he didn't, he'd walk in, you know what I mean? And we'd give the whole evening practicing then.
What kind of stuff were you playing?
There was no singing, of course, because there was no point in singing. We hadn't the microphone or nothing between us. Like stuff like Strangers in the Night and a lot of Herb Alpert stuff. And we were so green at the time that we didn't know how to tune Rem's guitar. We didn't know that much how to tune Rem's guitar. And it's a wonder that every peg in it didn't fly off, because we had it tuned up a tone too high. We were tuning it to the trumpet,
Right.
which it shouldn't have been. It should have been, the trumpet would be under it. Like if he was playing in C, I'd have to play in B flat in order for the tube to sound the same. But we didn't know the difference. It was a learning process, you know.
Yeah.
And yes, we thought we were great, like, you know. And we give the whole evening playing. You can imagine the trumpet just one after another. A bit of Herb Alpert stuff and Strangers in the Night and all this. But we got our first gig, if you like, for an old folks party over in the Convent Hall on a Sunday afternoon. This would be now very early 60s. And we were after buying black blazers. We were like something out of Rockwell College. And they were sort of, I think they were goldy buttons, you know, flat buttons. And I think it was grey pencils or something like that. And I don't know, was it a red tie and a white shirt, but anyway, we were like lads going to Rockwell College. And that's where we got our first gig, over in the old Convent Hall for an old folks party. And we probably blew the head off of them, but anyway. And with no equipment, no nothing, just walked in. Rem sat down playing the guitar, Ollie behind the couple of drums that he had, and me with the trumpet. And I think we got a feed and buns, and we got no money, like, but the feed, and that was our first gig. And we really thought we were top of the range, professional. But we went down a treat, like, you know. Whether it was out of sympathy or not, I don't know. But everyone seemed to enjoy it anyway. I suppose maybe no one wanted to say anything to us. They all knew us anyway, like, you know. I suppose the case they should, they're doing their best, you know. Even if they had the heads blown off us. But that was our first, if you like, gig, you know. And then we used to get a lot of the gigs. It was a thing called At Home. And it was run by Father Lamb. And Father Lamb was, I suppose he was before his time. He was a great man for the town, great man for gardening, rolling up the sleeves, minting a tira, going out digging flower beds and setting flowers all over the place. And he'd be in there with the late Patsy Lacey and Paddy Morrissey and all the minting and tira crowd, you know. And loved the town and loved to see the town getting on. Now, he was totally different from any of the rest of the priests, and totally different from Father Bacon. Now, he wasn't a young man, like, he wasn't a young fella, but they ran these At Home, it was called, down in Grant's Castle, in its original size, without the bar at the side, very small, and it was a meeting of theatre then, and we used to get the job of playing at these little dances, like, no singing, just playing. And I think he used to come up himself, do a party piece. Oh God, what was it? He had a party piece anyway, and he always sang. We knew it off by heart, like the key and all. He'd be singing it in the Bow Teddy Quill. That was his song, and we went down a bomb, like, you know. No money, we get a feed and all that, like. But we did that every August, and it was a kind of a festival in the town. That means in the theatre ran, there'd be different things happening around. Something, I suppose, like the Arts Fest now, but it wouldn't be sophisticated, you know. And I remember the very first money we earned, and we couldn't believe it, one year. They gave us 10 shillings each in a brown envelope. I think we were the first to get the brown envelopes. We probably invented the brown envelopes. That became very popular in later years. But we thought it was great. Our first 10 shillings that we actually earned playing music. That I didn't have to go out working hard to earn what I was doing, what I was enjoying, you know. And I ended up in Cork. and used to come home every weekend, and well, most weekends. And I was down in Crowley's at Cork, and I see this beautiful acoustic guitar hanging up. Now it was an F-hold guitar, it wasn't a round hold, it was like a cello, beautifully done, and I knew it was old, and I asked how much it was. Now it wasn't a flatback, it was like a cello, and I knew it was pretty old. Now it went back to the 30s or the 40s at least. It was a dance band guitar, and it was hanging up, and I remember it was £6 and 10 shillings, which was colossal. But he said if you put a deposit on it, he said, I can hold it for you. And I put 10 shillings on it to hold it, and it was hanging up, and I got on the blower to Rem. And I can't remember how he sent down the money, postal order or something, but he sent the £6 down anyway. And I can remember coming up that weekend, and the house I was staying in, they were all musical, you see, and they gave me a loan of a cello cover for a cello, and we tied it up, and I had to bring it on the bus, you see. And I remember Rem, and he was courting Joan at the time, and they're waiting below at the bus down the main street. Couldn't wait to see this guitar, and he played that then for years afterwards. It was a beautiful guitar. It was a real dance band genuine guitar, and it looked lovely with the F-holes in it instead of the round hole in the middle. Well, great make. Now I can't think of the make, but beautifully coloured and everything, you know. So we used to get a good few old bits and pieces of dances then, and every Sunday, ritualistically, we'd be over there in room 3, in the dark, no lights, no nothing, because we couldn't afford to pay for electricity or anything. All we wanted was the roof over our head. And from 2 to 6, and I'd have to bring back down the box then with Ollie again, and we'd be changing hands going down, because the hands would be cut off you from the rope, and Rem would walk out with his guitar on his back, and they were grand old times, you know. At 15, I left and went and ended up below in Cork. And before they knew where I was, with the idea that I was going to join the Barry Street Brass Band, was a famous brass band. Now, what was going to feed me and keep me with a brass band, I don't know.
So you just up sticks and left home, was it,
Yeah.
Michael?
But I ended up in the wrong place, and it was in the Salvation Army band that I went into. I saw this fellow going in, that must be it. And I got bed and board, and they couldn't get me out of it for a year. So I stayed in playing hymns on the streets of Cork. And you know, it was a funny thing, that was back, oh God, that's 64, I'd say. And it's a funny thing, I saw the homeless, well, to a smaller extent, but they were there at that time, sleeping on the streets. And when you think of it, in 2018, you still have it. They were still, you know, in the city of Cork, like, but you hadn't the drugs at that time. And one thing led to another. Then I got a chance of joining Doc Carroll and the Royal Blues, because there was a bit of money out of that. I wasn't supposed to be even playing on the stage, I was so young. And then I went with Dermot O'Brien and the Clubmen, and all over Ireland. I was staying in the Belvedere Hotel with him, with all the other bands, and I was getting £65 a week, plus 21 pounds for the hotel. It was £3 a night for a hotel, £1 a night for a B&B. And my father was earning, I think, 15 a week, but it still wasn't a job. This music wasn't a job. It was, you know, it was to be frowned on. Yeah. You know what I mean? I didn't know what to do with money because I couldn't spend it. I was gone every night of the week. What would you spend it on? When you went out for your dinner, I suppose. I never got a breakfast because I wouldn't be awake. And nowhere to go, like. Just got ready and you went off playing. You might be off of a Monday night. You might, if you were lucky. And Patrick Thornton at that time, he was growing up. He was training to be an accountant above in bachelor's, and he used to meet me of a Monday night, and he said, "You're a fool to be paying £3 a night," he says, "for a hotel. You're not even getting the breakfast." And he was staying in a place called Annamore Drive. It's on the North Settler Road. He said, "There's a load of B&Bs around where I am, but we're only small houses now. And all you had to do at that time to be a B&B was get a bit of cardboard and put B+B on it and put it out in the window, and you were a B&B. So we went around, and I got in with these two elderly Limerick ladies. And when they heard the Tipperary accent, I was treated like a god. I used to get the breakfast and tea going off and all before I went up. I know myself. And I could pocket an extra £2 a night into the pocket. But nothing to spend it on. Absolutely. You couldn't. What would you want to spend it on? You had no social life, like. Go to the zoo maybe if you're lucky or something like that. But you'd be too tired to go anywhere. Because I could be in Donegal tonight and I could be in Kerry tomorrow night. And we never played in Cashel with Dermot O'Brien. I don't think we ever played in Cashel with Doc Carroll. Can't remember now, but I don't think so. Any of the ones that ended in land, for some reason, Dermot O'Brien didn't play in. The Tipland, the Jetland, whether there was some argument or what, I don't know. But you had to have your union card in your pocket at all times when you were playing. And be paid up. The Irish Federation of Musicians was wicked strict. And anyone from another band could come in, even above in the Tipland. Even when I played with the Valiants in later years, and they could put you off the stage. They could demand that the band be put off the stage, which was terrible strict. You had to be a member, and you had to have everything paid up. It was the strictest union. I think I was only in two unions anyway. But now it is a bus pass I'd have if I was playing. You know. Now I played with a lot of musicians, and there were a lot of fine musicians, but I suppose the drink played havoc with a lot of them. It was part of the scene, but they were the finest musicians. They could hold their own with anyone. I remember one fella by the name of Billy Barron. He was only 16 when I was playing with him. Now I'd be a few years older than him, but when he'd come home after the night, he would take out the guitar and start practicing. He was just absolute, and he could copy anything. Once he'd hear it on a record, he could copy anything. And he ended up with the Jim Cantwell Big Band. Learned how to read music and the whole lot, but a fine musician. But there is a story about Billy. Billy was very slim. I was slim myself, but Billy had a girl kind of a shape from behind, you know, and the long straight hair. It'd be kind of divided in the middle, and if you saw him from behind you'd think it was a girl. But Billy had a motorbike, and depending on where we'd be playing, now if we were playing up the other direction he might be picked up. He was from Ballingarry, but if he had to meet the bus here, he'd leave the bike in the lane. And a real cold night we came back, and the bike would not start. And I said, "Look, sure, you can't do anything about it now. We'd only 2 rooms in the house." So Billy came in, and the 2 of us slept in the one bed, and in the morning my father came in to see was I home. Billy was turned into the wall with the long hair, and my father hit the roof. The consternation, it was wicked. My mother didn't know what was going on. We didn't know what was going on, so we were dead to the world. Bad enough, he says, going off out all night and playing and band. Now he's bringing home women with him, you know. And Billy there, and he rubbing the eyes, you know. And well, we didn't know what was going on. And because my mother started to laugh, you know. But he said that when he found out, then, why don't they cut their hair anyway? You know, he still wouldn't give in, you know. But that was Billy, yeah. Sure, I met Billy years and years afterwards, and he's as bald as an egg. Yeah. You know, when you think of it, he had a bit of a beard, but no hair. Completely.
There must have been some atmosphere in the halls,
there
must have been unbelievable.
But there's no comfort in the halls when you think of it, like the marquees and the wind blowing through them and the old galvanised roof, and you'd hear the rain and the hailstones and hopping off them, you know. No one minded that. You had no comfort. There was no such thing as carpets or anything like that. It was wall to wall people. Okay. Yeah.
Barely room to dance then in some of the places, Mike, was there?
Hardly room to just to manoeuvre. I think everyone had to take a breath at the same time. Or you had to do it in rotation or something, because there was no room. But it was wonderful, See all the faces. It was like a sea of faces. And drafty old halls, good floors on them, good dance floors, and the big high stage, and everyone looking up at you.
Wonderful feeling.
Oh, wonderful feeling, yeah. You were gods up. It didn't matter what band, And some of the women coming in, then they'd be dressed, you think it was the Miami were going to be playing there, And the high knee boots and the whole lot, it was wonderful, yeah. It was wonderful. But the women would be at one side, the men would be at the other, But you could see every move happening from the stage. And you could see a move beginning to start, even locally or otherwise. And you see this fella going across, and of course, if you were drunk, it was very few women who danced with you. Or they didn't want to know anything about you. The fella drunk, and he wouldn't be causing any problem, but he'd be drunk. The eyes would be kind of half closed, and he'd have the hand, he wouldn't be able to talk even. And he'd go up along the line, and they had their own ways of knocking them on the head. One might just turn away like that, and another one to do that. And he'd go up along the whole way, and he'd end right up at the very end, and no one dancing with him. And he'd never say a word, because that was the,
Back across to the boys then.
Back across to the boys. But the worst of all was the walk of shame, because if you did make a beeline for this one that you'd fancy across at the other side, and this fella came out of the air then like a Spitfire pilot, and he had a gun, and you were about 6 foot away from her, what were you going to do? The only choice you had was to dance with the ugly one that was beside her. And that's the one you were going for. Or walk back the whole length of the hall again and everyone looking at you. That was the worst thing that could happen, yeah. The worst thing that could happen. But you see all these things happening, But, God, we used to have some laughs, And you could be out all night, you could stand out in the street and they're laughing, and, nowadays they're stabbing everyone, and fellas now were turning around to think you were laughing at them or something.
Yeah.
But you could be out on the stage there, or out in the street, no one to take any notice of you. Bringing in and out all the gear, and, but they always had eggs in the bandwagon. That was a necessity. Eggs. You buy eggs and you kept them in the bandwagon. And it was done all over. And you'd be passing somewhere where there'd be another bandwagon. And you'd plaster it with the eggs, yeah. It was often done to us, yeah. Oh yeah. Fire them at the bandwagon. And you can imagine what they look like now, and they're running down the, But the comfort in the some of the bandwagon, the airplane seats, and fella, a road manager, and he putting up the stuff for you. When I think of how I got the job with O'Brien, I only got a telephone number from someone in the town. There was O'Brien was looking for a trumpet player. Sonny Knowles was leaving. He didn't want a trombone player because he played the trombone himself, but he wanted a sax on a trumpet. Phone that number, he says the road manager. I mean, I wouldn't have the nick to do it now, like. And I phoned, I got through, and the whole lot. And I said, what about an audition? But he said, if you can't play, don't come. That's the answer. I never had an audition. And I hit off that day. It was Martin Hunt that rubbed me up. I was to be above in Carlow at, I think it was 7 o'clock, outside the Wimpy Bear. And I thought we were playing in Carlow. And nothing on me, only what was on me. And the trumpet in the case, that was it. They told me if you have any kind of a grey suit at all, wear the suit. That's it, we'd fix you up if you're staying. Not knowing where I was going that night, where I was going to be sleeping. But when you were young, you didn't care. I wouldn't do it now. I just often wondered did it ever happen. Can't believe it. And I walked around Carlow and I found the hall, and there's no Dermot O'Brien playing here anyway. But I always fell on my feet. Even in the digs where I ever stayed, I met this woman coming up, and I said, do you know any other hall? No, she said, there's no other hall here, but you're a musician. She said, I have a son, a musician. Come down, she said, and I'll get you a bit of rub. And brought me down, and I had the finest fry you ever see. And, I often think of that. But always fell on the feet. And got picked up outside the Wimpy Bear. Didn't know anyone in the band. Got in. Everyone introduced themselves. Your man was driving. We were playing over in Shillelagh, County Wicklow, in a marquee in the Cheshire Home in Shillelagh, County Wicklow. So they were doing a whatever. But yeah, had a good night, played. Didn't know whether I was going to be kept or not. And I just said to, I said, what? Oh yeah, you said you're fine, yeah. We'll deck you out tomorrow, he said. There's a couple of quid, he says, we'll fix up everything tomorrow. You're coming back to Dublin with us and into the Belvedere Hotel. And all the bands were staying there. I met them all, DJ and the Kerry Blues and all the top men were staying there, yeah. But lovely. Can't say I like Dublin, but you know. But then I was sleeping most of the day. And the first chance I got of coming home was, I'd say about 3 weeks later. We were playing in Tipperary, the Tower, is it the Tower Ballroom? I think it's the Tower. Yeah. And I got home and your man says, do you want to go up to see the mother and father? And he says, well, that's the first time in 3 weeks. But nothing easy about the job. It wasn't an easy life, but I loved it. We all loved it. You had no business in it if you didn't love it. But music was a passion with me. I would never even put anything else down on a census form on a musician. It's in my will. In my will, specified that when I die, musician is put after my name on the headstone. I just didn't want to be ever remembered as anything else. It was like a drug to me. But what I really wanted to do was the Army Academy of Music. And that didn't materialise. And I had the job got. Went up, as bold as you like, when I was in Dublin with O'Brien. Went into, I suppose it was Cashel Brass barracks, but one of the barracks was up there. Got to the pillbox, met the boys, said I want to see who was in charge of the School of Music. And of course the boy said, you must be mad, you're playing with Tim O'Brien. He said, earning all that money and you want to give it all up, he says, to join the army band. But he said, that's what I'd like to do, go further, you know. And I did. I got a 1-to-1 with a colonel, I can't remember his name, at both sides of a desk. Now you don't do that nowadays. You know what I mean? You'd have CVs and, you'd want a diploma now before you get into anything like that. But they wanted the right age. I was the right age. Now he said, there's forms. You have the job got, come back in a fortnight, but they have to sign the form. And they wouldn't sign.
The mum and dad?
No. I often said to myself, I've often wondered, I should have transported them or something, you know. But it was a dream. To this day, and it angers me. Because that was what I wanted. Right, you sign up for 3 years. Now, no one knows the future. But if you'd done 21 years, you had your full pension. And while you'd be in it, you could be studying music, and I would love to have had a bachelor degree in music, or even go for a master's degree in music. I never had any inclination to be a music teacher. But to have those qualifications, something in life, but it's too late now, it won't take me now and I'm nearly 70, but that was one regret.
You often spoke about Alice's Bistro was supposed to be a hub, was it? Where you used all to meet up the bands.
Oh yeah, all meet there, yeah. Everyone knew about Alice's. I don't know, you know, it's only a small place, but all the bands passing through, they always knew about Alice. It was a landmark. Oh, that was a landmark, like, and she was an icon, you know, and she was able to handle them all, like, she knew them all, and all the photographs, they'd be giving her the pictures, you know, the handouts, and she'd have them on the wall, you know, all the different bands, yeah. Even up to the recent times with Gina now and Dale Hayes and the Champions, they always went in there, and they'd be one of the more modern show bands, like, you know. Sure, I mean, there must have been something like 2,000 show bands at the time.
Oh my God.
If you stood at the corner down there, they pass them one of them. You know. But I remember we were playing in Cork somewhere and going down during the evening, during the afternoon, and just around Kilcorn, there was this big, huge van. and it was gone in over a wall below of a drop of about 3 or 4 feet into a fella's garden at Kincorn, down like that. And it was James Last coming home from the Rose of Tralee. They played at the Rose of Tralee that year, and the van was after crashing, and there was another big van across the road, and he was the boys and they going across, and we stopped and we got out and we gave him a hand, and I actually met and shook hands with James Last. That was the only time. I never heard him performing other than on record, but I shook his hand, yeah. And they were all Germans, like, you know, and they loaded the stuff across, yeah.
How did the Bob Dylan thing come about, Michael?
The Bob Dylan thing came, Frank something, he was the guitar player with Dermot O'Brien, and a fine guitar player. He was a Dublin man, and he said, are you interested in doing a gig? And I said, what is it like? This was 1978, and he said, it's Bob Dylan. Now, I never liked Bob Dylan singing, I have to admit. Even to this day, I don't like Bob Dylan singing. I liked his stuff, but other people, to me, always sang him better. I said, yeah. He said, they're putting backing together for the concert. Now, he said, you're able to read, so there's no problem. And he got me in. But Bob Dylan that night never spoke to one of us. He never spoke to the audience, because he was very eccentric. Now, I'm more than eccentric myself, but he would leave me standing. But he was a young man then, like. But I got well paid for it. But it was something...
It was an experience, I suppose.
Yeah.
Yeah. So we're somewhere in Dublin, Michael,
it was in Dublin.
was it?
Yeah, it was in Dublin at a concert. And I think it was only a one night. It was only a one night. But it was an experience, but I never liked him singing. Never liked the sound of the way he sang him, you know. But he wrote some nice stuff. And other singers have, to me, sang him better. You know, but I never let music go to my head, except that was always in my head. But, because Billy Darcy always taught me that no matter how good you think you are, there's somebody out there who says better, and maybe 10 times better, you know. So I always took it just as it came, you know. And people asked me about Bob Dylan, and I backed Cilla Black one night, and I backed Sandy Shaw. Grand, lovely to say that you did it, like, you know. But I took it all as it came, you know.
Only as good as your last gig, I suppose,
Yeah.
isn't it, kind of a thing?
Yeah, you'll be always learning. You were always learning. And I had one regret that I didn't learn another instrument. Maybe nowadays a good country fiddle player will get a job, like, whereas you won't with a trumpet. They can put on a machine now and they can copy that and they like, you know. But I ended up with just 5, and you know, they were a good band, very popular band. And by the time I finished, we were doing 5 to 6 nights a week, weddings. I never had to go looking for a booking, like. They were just coming through the phone to know, were we available this night or that night. Very popular for weddings. And there was good money in it then. That'd be up to the 90s. And I was in my heyday then. But then I started to get a bit, I suppose I was getting older. It wasn't easy to keep blowing the trumpet, like. But I would love to have played the guitar or the fiddle, fall back on something, which I should have done. But, and I regret now that I never made a CD with the trumpet. Paid for a few of the musicians and get it recorded, shut as a recording studio locally.
Absolutely,
and do it, and I might make nothing on it, but if I did, I would have given it to the Children's Hospital in Crumlin. If that never did come off, it wasn't to make money on it, but I would just love to have a CD, because people always ask me, what would you like playing? And I said, well, you can make up your own mind, you know. Yeah.
Still not too late, Michael.
Sure, I don't know.
Still not too late.
It's just the instrument, you know.
Yeah.
But I bought the trumpet off of Billy Darcy, and he bought it off of Mick Fogarty, And Mick Fogarty bought it off of a fella called O'Brien in Clonmel. And he bought it originally in America and played it in America. He was a professional musician in America. Wouldn't have known, just back in the 30s. And when O'Brien came back in the 60s, that's when Mick met him. And he bought the trumpet from him. Billy bought it from him, and I bought it off of Billy. But years afterwards, in the middle 70s or that, I had to get the trumpet done, lacquered. And there was a fella, he's still alive, over Carol Weiss. He played saxophone with Mick Delahunty, a fine musician, a German. And he used to do all the lacquering for all the lads, and you do them a lot cheaper than you get it done in McCullough Pickett's. And I met Carol one day and went over to collect the trumpet, and I was telling him, yeah, he said, he's still alive, he says. I'll tell you where he's living. He said, he would love to meet you, this O'Brien man. He said, he's elderly now, he said, and he told me how to get there. And I don't know what part of Clonmel, but I got up and met him, big tall man with a real tash. And I told him who I was, and I had the trumpet, you see, because I was after getting it. And the man actually cried. The tears came out of that man's eyes. He was a very elderly man. He said, I never thought I'd see that trumpet again, he says. But I'm glad to know that there's someone still playing it, he says, and that you're looking after it so well, because it was like new. Same case, everything, but the trumpet was shining. Absolutely shining, you know. And we had a great old chat. You know, I went over on the bus to get it and back again. But I met the man that originally bought that trumpet. Yeah, it was it was the second best make. The best make was a Constellation. And the second was a Con 22B. And Billy wouldn't have anything now, only the best. You know. So I bought it off of Billy for £45. And I paid him, I think it was a £5 a week. I think that's the way. And I think Billy was delighted that was being played. And then I was playing it in the brass band with Billy, you know. But Billy was, as you know, there was only the right way of doing everything. You know what I mean? There was no wrong way of doing a thing. No jumping over a thing or covering it up or that. You know. Now I remember Billy as a young fella playing the trumpet. Used to hear him in the town hall and playing with Gussie and all that. And a fine trumpet. Oh, he was a fine trumpet player. But Billy gave every available minute that he could outside in the shed, practicing and getting every book that he could ever lay his hands on. But Billy, as he said himself, I had one fault, he says. You're supposed to put the pressure on the top lip. That can take more pressure. But he used to put the pressure on the bottom, and he busted one night, and he played, just split. Could never play after. And that's why he went on the bass then, but sure, he was a fine bass player then as well. But I think that's why he taught me an awful lot. You know, how to play from the stomach. Not to be with the jaws puffed out and everyone saying, God, he's under right pressure. You played as if you weren't even blowing it. And I was always able to do that, but you get off on the right foot, you see. But I know he did, he put me on the straight and narrow. And you know, when you meet someone like that knows what they're talking about, it was the best that I was going to get under the circumstances that I couldn't get into any academy and I was finished with all that. No chance, like. But Billy was, I suppose, one of the greatest musicians that ever came out of Cashel. Indeed, in Ireland, he could hold his own. He could have went on to do greater things. And I remember Billy telling me in his day, he wanted to join the Army School of Music. And he couldn't get in because of his parents. You know.
Yeah, I think in an interview I heard with Billy, I think again, kind of frowned on John David, who only passed away there
That's
a couple
right,
of
he
months
was a
ago.
drummer, yeah.
John said the same to me, that his father
Oh, yeah.
never considered being a musician was an occupation.
He was a
An
drummer.
occupation, John. That's right.
And he was, I think he managed a band called the Millionaires.
That's right, and he was in the Millionaires. He was the drummer with them.
Millionaires,
That's right.
yeah, and he was the manager, yeah. But of course the music was in the Devils, you know. Even with Tom would be singing. I'm sure James with the pantomimes and everything else. It's in that family, you know. And Pat.
Pat was a great singer.
Fine singer. Fine old crooner, you know. So, like, the music there was an awful lot of talent in Cashel. And, you know, the brass band and lads like that, they were kind of looked down on a bit, you know. Big music teachers now with all the letters after the names, they look down on people. But some of the finest musicians that I ever met, Christy Price and Gussie MacDonald. Gussie was one of the finest drummers in Ireland and could read the drums. And Billy, Christy Price, Jimmy Murphy, give them a piece of music there and they'd play it. You know, but they had no letters after their name like myself. And you were still only a brass band musician, you know what I mean? It was frowned, looked down on by the head brass, like, you know. But I played at a few shows now. I played a Good Night Vienna and I played at the Sound of Music, and there was another one. There was 3 anyway that I done above in the hall. Now I never liked playing at shows because you were riveted to this chair and there was no chance of getting a bottle or anything like that. Couldn't even get one brought in. So you were riveted there for, what was it, 8 or 9 nights, you know, playing the same thing every night. And that was, you'd had to be on the ball as you were going on, because that was the time you'd make a mistake. And you had to go with the one that was singing on the stage, because she went out at time you had to go with her. She was right at all costs. You know, the band would have to, you know. But the finest musician, there was some talent in Cashel. You know, when you go back to the Mahonas, there were a whole family of them there, and they were an orchestra in themselves. I think there's photographs of them in one of Nelly's books, I think. Patrick, and he was a fine fiddle player, and the sisters were cellists and pianists. They were, you know, and you did quickly here at the corner. And they were all, well, put a sheet of music in front of them and they could read it. And it's a great achievement to be able to do that. You know, as well as play by ear. But there was some talent in Cashel. Now, you wanted to know something about the captain. I was hoping you wouldn't ask. But and you were one yourself, so you know the reason why. I think we both hated the job. But I don't know that anyone ever hate the carpentry as much as I hated it. But everybody thought that I loved it, like. But then, as you know, when you were doing it, you had to do it. And there was no point in saying, well, you know, I'm not going to do it. You had to earn your trust, like. But I did hate it. I really, really venomously hated carpentry, and I'm glad that that is down on paper and in front of a camera. I had to do 5 years, but within that 5 years, as I said to you the other day, the Army School of Music was there, that I never knew anything about, and of course that didn't work out. But it was a case of all my mother's side were carpenters, so I was expected to be the same. But I really, looking back, I was 8.5 stone for most of that working life. And you know what it was like, because you did it yourself. And it wasn't an easy job. I never found it easy. I was never robust enough for the job. And I wasn't over anxious about heights. Now I went up on them, but I wasn't over anxious about them. I hated it with a vengeance.
Where did you serve your time, Michael?
Fahy and Caligy. And we had to play with the brass band an odd time, not very often, for a few funerals that would occur maybe during the working week. Well, I would never tell that I was taking the day off. I just went, and I took the whole day off. And unluckily enough, I was never sacked, unfortunately. And I was only, I think, hoping that they would sack me, and they never did. You know, it wasn't the case. The rest of the lads would go to their jobs, they'd take off at 10 o'clock and come back at 2 o'clock. No, Michael Moore would take the whole day off, with no excuses, nothing. You know, that was it. I was a professional musician that day, and that was it. Even though we were only playing for a funeral or something like that, we played for a funeral. But you know yourself, music was stuck in you, and that was it.
When Michael when did the end come then with the music? When did the end come then with the live music? When did you finish up? Maybe the early 90s, was it, Michael?
Well into the 90s.
Yeah.
I finished in the early 90s, but the music was going on, you know, and like you can see what it's like now. It's nearly, you know, but all the bands that are there now, I mean, I wouldn't know half of it. I wouldn't know any of those fellas, like Mike Denver and all those, but they're all top class musicians, and the fellas that are backing them, these fiddle players, they're as good as anything you'd hear in Nashville.
It's coming back around, isn't it? They're filling ballrooms out around the country and
the social dancing and all that, although I never liked dancing. It's down in your book what I thought of it.
Yeah.
I always treated carpentry and called it as a disease. I never called it a trade. To me it was a disease. And I remember the day that I got my papers, which meant nothing to me. And I came home, and this official looking envelope was on the... I had to do Anko at the time then. I don't know what they call it now, FOSS.
FOSS or something else again after FOSS.
But I remember, and I just opened the envelope and looked in, and it was telling me that I was a qualified carpenter, joiner and cabinet maker. And I never took the papers out of the envelope, and I crumpled them up, and I remember taking the top off of the Jubilee cooker and sending them to hell. And my mother and father was there, and they said, "What are you doing?" I said, "I'm sending them to hell, where the job should be sent." We had many an argument. We did have many an argument. But they didn't understand me, and I couldn't understand them. Because I think you know yourself what you're cut out for. And you know, unless you know that you're very lazy altogether, and there are people that don't want to work at all, like, but you know what you're cut out for, and what you love, and what you want to do, and what you're good at, and what you're prepared to work at. You know, and that's what I admire the young people nowadays. They won't be told by anyone what job they're going to go into. They have it in their head, and there's so many jobs that I don't even know half what they mean, marketing and all this. They know what they want, they go to college, they know what's in front of them, they don't find it easy, it's expensive, but they go for it. And like the opportunities are there. But I would love to have done, as I said, the Army School of Music, and maybe end up with study for a bachelor's degree in music, even for a master's degree in music. Blood was in, or music was in my blood. I don't know where it came out of, but once I heard a bit, even to this day, and I'm going on 70, but I can hear something from the 60s and the something that gets me going, or a piece, and I'm as young, I feel as young as I was back then. Yeah. It's a different ball game, you know. It wasn't an easy life. By no means, it's not an easy life, but it was a great life.
An enjoyable one.
I enjoyed every absolute minute of it. I enjoyed those people coming up. Now they'd be the older generation. The minute they see the trumpet and saying to me, "Will you play Cherry Pink and Apple Blossom?" or "Will you play," you know, they'd know the trumpet tunes. Because the minute they saw the trumpet in the band, they said, "Well, this one is able to play, I bet you he knows El Silencio," or something. And that made my night. And they probably more than likely brought me up a pint. I remember having 8 pints around me one night, around in a circle. I used to drink the Guinness. And the newest pint, of course, would be at this side, and the oldest one would be, I'd be walking up the way now. And I can remember a couple swinging around the stage, and he looked at the pints, and he looked up and he said, "I'd hate to see if you were fond of it." Had him around in a circle, you know. Oh yeah. Oh God. But,